can I please ask all officers and guests to turn off their cameras? You should turn on your camera and microphone when you speak, but please turn them back off again afterward. Could I please, recording has started. Okay. Prynawn da, croeso I cyfarfod, diolch I chi gyd am dod. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and may be broadcast via the authority's internet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the authority. Okay, agenda item number 1, apologies for absence. I don't think we have any.
No apologies received, Chair.
Lovely, thank you, Michelle. Agenda item number 2, declarations of interest. Has anybody got anything to declare? No, okay. Right, agenda item number 4 has to come before agenda item number 3 today. The committee must review and approve the draft work programme before receiving any other reports. I take it everyone has gone through the draft work programme. Is everybody happy with the reports? The way they're organised? Yeah, I take it everyone is. Okay, and we'll go on to agenda item number 3, absorbent hygiene product recycling, nappies. And I think this is going to be presented by Steve. Is Steve gone again? No, lovely. I think it's you, Steve.
Right, yeah, the report was put together in response to a report formulated by the Scrutiny Committee in relation to nappy recycling, following discussion with Nappy Cycle UK. So we were asked to put together the pros and cons of recycling nappies, or we refer to them as absorbent hygiene products, because that term covers incontinent pads and that sort of thing as well. So it's a little bit more extensive. So we've put together the pros and cons of that working in Merthyr Tydfil, and the recommendation is that we debate that today.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. We'll go straight into questions then, if anybody has any. Clive?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Could I ask the Chief Officer and or the Cabinet Member this particular question? And I think I would be grateful if the answer is recorded as well. 2 years ago now, in June 2019, a motion was put before the full council relating to a nappy recycling scheme. And the resolution of that meeting in June 2019 reads, and this was agreed by the full council, a full detailed business case and viability study be carried out to implement a nappy recycling scheme in Merthyr Tydfil at the earliest opportunity, and that a report be brought back to full council meeting in December 2019. I carried out a check. There's no report being presented to council since then. So could I ask, please, what were the reason or reasons why the instruction of the full council 2 years ago has not been implemented?
Hi, Clive. Yeah, the reason for that is that we're not yet in a position to do that. As you may be aware, Welsh Government are looking into providing a nappy recycling or AHP recycling facility in both North Wales and South Wales, so that all authorities in Wales can carry this out. So until that procurement exercise is underway and is established, that gives us all the required figures that we need to compile a business case, that won't be brought to full council until that time.
So the December date, why, the December date was agreed. you know explained some of the reasons why that wasn't brought before council. Shouldn't a report have been brought before council anyway, explaining the situation as to why that couldn't be undertaken?
Quite possibly, but there wouldn't have been anything to say, so I felt prudent to wait until there was substantive information to give council.
So we are still in exactly the same position then as we were 2 years ago, Judith. It doesn't seem to have moved on anywhere from there. So this, in your pros and cons, under the heading pros, you've stated here, an AHP treatment facility contract is currently being procured by Welsh Government and should be operational at, is that Amgen or Amgen in 2022? Is that definitely the case? And what is Amgen?
Yeah, I think it's the calendar year, the year 22-23. They're hoping for. Obviously, that's not confirmed yet. Amgen is the recycling facility within RCT, and that is the preferred location, as I understand it, for the South Wales facility. Right.
So we're talking about sometime during the financial year 2022-23, and as I say, that's based in RCT. Can you tell me at least eight local authorities now have a nappy and hygiene products recycling scheme? For example, two of them surrounding us. One is RCT and the other one is Blaenau Gwent. Have we, for example, got details of how they carry out this recycling scheme? And particularly in the case of Blaenau Gwent, it's an authority fairly comparable to Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council. Its population is probably about 13,000 more than us. So do you have figures ready to hand as to how they operate the nappy recycling and the costs as well?
Yeah, for Blaenau Gwent, they, I understand they started the operation about approximately 3 years ago. The study into introducing that service at the time suggested it would cost them approximately £2,000 a week. So obviously just over £100,000 a year. I understand they carry it out on a fortnightly collection basis. Having spoken to quite a number of other authorities who do carry out the service, for instance, Bridgend, RCT, etc. They anecdotally not wholly encouraging in setting it up in terms of, you know, if they are asked for savings, then it's the part of the service that they look to, because obviously it is a costly service to deliver. And unlike most of the other waste streams, it's not something that every resident participates in. So in terms of the the value from it, those are the reservations that they've expressed verbally.
So Blaenau Gwent, you said it's approximately cost £2,000 per week?
Yeah, that was a study they had carried out when they were looking to introduce it.
So they've been operating for 3 years. Do you know what the costs are now, for example, in Blaenau Gwent?
No, but I would imagine they are around that amount. It obviously depends on participation levels, etc.
But you've put a list of the pros and cons, and the cons were a whole list of costs of setting this up. Surely all the 8 authorities that are operating this in Wales have dealt with that and included capital costs for the purchase of vehicles, etc. So, to your knowledge, did, for example, Blaenau Gwent do that? And do you know what the figure is?
Did Blaenau Gwent do what, sorry?
What were they, for example, the setup costs of it?
I haven't been privy to that information. Obviously, you'll appreciate that some of it is confidential to them.
Can I ask you another question under the heading of the cons? It says here, one of the dots, 20% of AHPs are recovered at present from EFW bottom ash recycling. So if there's only a 70% recycling rate for AHPs, this would result in a 21-ton decrease on our recycling tonnages. Can you explain that paragraph to me, please? Because I've read it a few times and I don't quite understand exactly what's been said there.
Yeah, I'll ask Steve to go into the detail, but broadly, what it relates to is the recycling element that we currently get from those type of materials versus what we would get if it was a specific collection for AHPs. But Steve, you wrote that paragraph. Can you explain it a bit better than me?
Yeah. We get copied in monthly reports from the regional AHP contract. As Judith explained earlier, they're in the procurement stage at the moment. I think the commissioning stage is due just after Christmas, and they're hoping to have it operational by next April or May. So we seem to be privy to that for some reason, although we're not part of the contract. I think it's because we shared and expressed an interest a while ago that we couldn't do it at the moment, but you know, we want to keep our sort of finger on the pulse then. So the figure that I've seen in that report from RCT states that the current rates are between 17% and 40%. So it seems as if they are not sure at the moment, and this is basically just reiterating what we've seen there.
Right. And going back to Judith, you say nothing can be done until you've had this information from the Welsh Government between 2022 and 23. So when can the full council expect a detailed business case presented to them?
I would be guessing, but I would imagine 2022.
But thanks. I may have more other questions depending on what other members ask, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Clive. Lee?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just around the costs. They seem rather high to myself. How many contractors or suppliers did you speak to gain these costs? When myself and Declan were doing some research, I spoke to a supplier, and 2 vehicles come to £130,000 less than the figures quoted on here.
Yeah, as you'll be aware, we've recently procured a lot of new vehicles, so a lot of the information is based on that. I think it's probably worth saying that the information contained in the report is obviously looking at if we were to implement the service now. Hence, you know, we're listing things like, you know, licenses and sites and those vehicles and things. I think when it comes to the point that the Welsh Government have completed their procurement of their service, obviously that report may well look a lot different. So just to bear that in mind, that, you know, that report is based on if we were to implement the service now.
Did you speak to many different suppliers though to gain these costs, or was it just one, or was it just a guesstimate on what the vehicles you just purchased?
I'm not sure of the exact number. Paul would have spoken to people on the vehicles. I don't know if Steve knows. I don't think it was a high number of people. But I'm not really sure on that. Steve, do you know?
It's based on current costs for an RCV, so it's an RCV times 2.
Okay, because like I think the costs I'd looked at before, there was like a 7-tonner and which was something like 85,000, and a 3.5 tonner was 65,000. They were nappy cycling.
We've ever had waste vehicles that low, to be honest.
They were aluminium chassis nappy cycling vehicles. They were specific for nappy recycling, and also when we discussed it with nappy recycling, they discussed about the funding and being available to purchase these vehicles via Welsh Government, and maybe doing a split vehicle, so picking waste up, so it'd be an 80-20 split. So maybe it wouldn't necessarily need more bodies. They could pick up the nappy recycling at the same time as picking up waste, and the vehicle would be split.
Yeah, I think we noted potential for funding for vehicles in one of the pros, because you'd hope that when Welsh Government carry out this exercise, that there would be funding available for that. In terms of the 80-20 split, I discussed that with Paul. Obviously, anything we reduce from the residual vehicle means that we'd need additional capacity, so we'd need an additional vehicle to backfill that residual then. So it was kind of, you take one away to provide the nappy capacity, but you'd need additional then for the residual waste. So there isn't really any benefit in that.
Just one last question I got, in terms of like fly tipping. Do we have any ideas of maybe the amount of tonnages that maybe go into fly tipping waste that's picked up? I know that's probably quite difficult to put a figure on.
No, I don't, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Lee. Thomas Butler.
Hi. I've got two questions for item 6.2. One where it says staff, at least 2 members, are approximately 60k. Is that 60k each or all together?
That would be for both members of staff.
And the other one is on where it says containers for residents, approximately 4k. How many containers is that based on?
Steve, am I right in thinking that would be approximately approximate percentage of households that participate in the scheme?
Yeah, it would be based on the percentage of households, based on the nappy cycle figures, and the participation percentage taken out of that as well. There are no costs for ongoing replacements of these, though.
Okay, thanks.
Tom, are you finished?
Yeah, I'm trying to put my hand down.
Councillor David Jones.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned RCT have pitched for the AHP centre. Did we look at putting a bid in for a similar centre? Sorry, and I do have another question.
Not that I'm aware of, but there may have been before I was in post, but not that I am aware of.
Councillor, it was this has been ongoing for a while. This was part of the proposals for the eco park, and will form part of the eco park up at Amgen.
Thank you for that. And the other part is, it's been mentioned about the capacity in the vehicles. With the reasonably large amounts of nappies that's being collected, that will create, if the nappies weren't being collected with other residual waste, then that would leave capacity in the vehicles, which would be a positive benefit, would it not?
In terms of our recycling figures, you mean?
No, the refuse. If we're not collecting nappies, then there's more space to collect more other refuse on that round, which would mean that either the rounds could be reconfigured or less trips to the tips.
I see what you mean. Yeah, quite possibly. Obviously, it all depends on participation rates, because there's no guarantee how many would participate, but quite possibly.
So there may be other benefits that aren't highlighted in the cases that we've had put in before us.
Possibly, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Di. And anybody else got any questions? Clive?
Yes, probably Steve would be able to answer this one, Chair. We provide bins for collection of nappies or incontinent pads at the moment. But there is a set procedure as to the entitlement. Do you happen to know the number of, these are the larger bins with a sort of yellow mark around the bin. And currently, my understanding is that there are parents who have applied for these larger bins have been refused. So do we know how many bins we've got at the moment? And that'll give you a really good idea as to the numbers involved.
Yes, the figure is just over 400. As you can appreciate, that changes daily, really, but with some residents who no longer require them, having them taken back, or new applications being successful, and so the figure remains quite constant around the 400 mark, and the majority of these bins are for nappies or incontinent pads, so AHP waste.
But surely that doesn't equate to the number of parents. Are you saying there's only out of 27,300 odd properties in the county borough, there's only 400 of these bins that are utilised for either nappies or incontinent pads, for example? If that's the case, I would suggest that there is an awful lot of nappies, particularly going into bins, the smaller bins, and thereby causing a problem because these are not collected every fortnight. And I've seen that, you know, in my own family, where it's impossible to put all these nappies, especially if you've got two where there's nappies having to be provided, plus all the other residual waste you put in an ordinary black bin. So I would suggest to you that there is far more than 400 where people have either been refused nappies or haven't applied for it, and they're going into the ordinary bins.
Yes, Councillor, yeah, there's certainly more than 400. The figure of 400 is only those residents who have applied and been successful in that application. And most of those are families with multiple children or family members who have incontinency problems. So a lot of families with just one child in nappy manage with a 140 litre bin that there seems to be capacity in there. So it's only in cases where these families are producing excessive non-recyclable waste. And as I said earlier, the majority of those applications are from AHPs.
Well, I suggest to you that there's an awful lot of households who've either been refused the bins and they're having to try and jam them into the smaller bins, and others who just, they know if people are being refused, just aren't bothered. So I don't think the figure of 400 equates, it doesn't indicate to yourselves the size of the problem.
It doesn't, but from the figure provided by Nappy Cycle, almost 2,000 families have children in nappies. I wouldn't know the figure of the residents in the borough, households in the borough that would have sort of using incontinent pads, but obviously that bumps the figure of 2,000 up slightly or considerably. So yes, you're moving into a ballpark figure of around 3,000, 4,000 households. But we can only go on our application process. Residents are aware of the system. If they apply, the wardens carry out bin audits, so they rummage through their bins. They make sure there's no recycled items in there. And if the family cannot manage because they produce too much non-recyclable waste, then the application is successful. In cases where there's recyclable items in the bin, then obviously they will fail that application and won't be granted the bin.
Can you tell me what is is it Amgen or Amgen? What does that mean? What does the initials mean?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. It's
Does Judith know?
I believe it's kind of their play on words for ambition in Welsh. I think it's
Right.
not an acronym or anything. It's a translation.
Right. Okay. So I still, well, obviously none of us know what it means.
it's a law doc. It is the terminology, councillor, and basically
Sorry, it's what? Sorry.
A law doc. They were introduced many years ago. Merthyr didn't introduce them themselves, and I think RCT might have been one of the few authorities that did. And basically, what it means is that the authority produces a company, RCT's, I'm getting the case of RCT, and that company oversees their waste management functions. So the relationship is it's part of RCT, but not quite 100%. That's my brief understanding of it.
If and when we introduce nappy recycling in the future, there seems to be a bit of a question mark over it. Am I right in thinking that you would have to have a separate facility to take these to? Is that what's been indicated in the report? Or could that be stored in either or both recycling centres that we've got at the moment?
I think that's the crux of the report, really, is that I know it comes across as quite negative. There are more cons than there are pros, but it's not to say that the neighbourhood services are not sort of supportive of this opportunity. I think the drawback for us at the moment is that we would have to bulk, and then you're going into the realms of having a permitted site capacity at our current sites, either the HMRCs or our depot is minimal. So, you know, I don't think we could do it there. Then you've got the travel distance to Ammanford to dispose of them, where we probably it's worthwhile reviewing this in a year's time when the RCT facility is up and running. It takes away the storage issue because we can direct deliver there, and any permitting sort of requirements as well. So
through you, Chair, until this facility in Amberford is available, what do Brian Gwent and RCT do? Where do they take the nappies? Do they store them in the same civic amenity sites, or have they got a separate site? What do they do with them at the moment?
Well, RCT obviously they have the Amgen facility where they can store materials. So they are bulking these materials there and then transport into Ammanford. And similarly with Blaenau Gwent, Silent Valley operate their waste facilities and they store them on a daily basis. And then once they bulk, they take them to Ammanford.
And how often, to your knowledge, do they use transport to go back and forth to Ammanford?
I'm not sure. We haven't asked that question.
It's not daily then, as far as you know.
I honestly wouldn't know.
Right. I didn't mention Ammanford earlier, but obviously we're waiting for the facility in RCT, aren't we? That's what it is, not Ammanford. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Clive. Just in regards to that, it's every week it is because I think they can't let bugs build up, which would there's a certain cycle for maggots, 10 days. So I think it's every week. Lee, do you want to come in?
Yeah, it's just about the thanks, Chair. It's just about the delivery down to Ammanford. It was my understanding that that they came to pick it up rather than it be delivered. That it would be our responsibility. You know, when we had the meeting with them, they come to collect off us rather than us delivering it to them. And they said about the possibility of us storing our nappies within Amgen as well, or Brimpika as well, rather than us being our responsibility to get it down to Ammanford.
I can respond on that if you like. We have raised the question with RCT if they would be prepared to take ours, but they weren't receptive to that. I think the issue for us at the moment is obviously we haven't got a permit to store them, so we would have to take them off site every day. If they would come to us, then you know, potentially, but obviously if for whatever reason that didn't happen, we'd be in difficulty then because we wouldn't have a permit to keep them there even overnight.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions? Clive? Clive, you're on mute.
Sorry, who issues the permits for this facility? Is it an overarching body? Who is it?
Yeah, that would be Natural Resources Wales.
And their guidelines would stipulate what? That you have to store them in a particular facility for a certain time before collecting. Is that what the permit entails?
Yeah, so we'd have to identify a suitable plot of land, and then we'd have to sort of submit a business case to them explaining what the function of the facility would be, which would be quite detailed. They would review that then, and if we're successful, they award us the permit. You've got the ongoing permit requirements then of competency, so you'd have to have the relevant officers trained up to manage that facility, and the ongoing 2-year sort of compliance renewal then.
So you would have to have an officer whose only job is dealing with that. Is that correct?
No. We have a number of qualified persons that manage waste facilities in waste services. It depends on the amount of hours required to manage that facility. If I give you an example of our Unit 20 depot, the competent officer has to be on site 80% of the time, whereas for the HWRCs, the requirement is 20% of the time. So there are 4 of us qualified to manage these facilities. So, for instance, if you had a AHP site, then as long as that could fit in with our hours, then fine. If it couldn't, then you need another person trained up and qualified.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else got any questions? Okay, I've just got one question before we go on to comments, and I've got quite a few of them. The question is, it's Stephen, it's in regards to 4.1, and it's the nappies are sent to energy from waste, the energy from waste facility, which provides us with bottom ash. Can you do anything with bottom ash, or is that toxic? Can it be used for anything?
Yes, yeah, it's used, it's recycled. We get 20% back, as the report says, to our recovery figure, and it's made into sort of cement product, or used in road surfacing or under a subsurface.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Stephen. Anybody else got any questions before we go to comments? Okay, we'll go on to comments, and I'm just going to start. I've just got a couple first, and then I'm going to let members come in then, and I'm going to come back. Stephen, I'm glad you said earlier that the report comes across as a bit negative. To be honest, I've never seen a more negative report come to any committee. It comes across as we don't want to do it, you know, to be honest. And I go through some of the things later on, but like when you say that in the cons, a risk of additional capacity left in the wheel bin will be filled with recyclables to the detriment of our waste recovery target. That's so negative. You know, we've got a chance to do something really good here. And this just comes on to the point where Judith said we won't do anything until Welsh Government bring this report in 22-23. It's Well, 19 out of 22 Welsh councils have said that they're on board with this process, to be honest. And it's well, why can't we be? You know, it's just so negative. Any members got any comments? Clive?
Chair, I couldn't agree with you more. The plain fact is that this was a subject of a motion 2 years ago. The full council agreed with that, and the resolution stated that we'd have a report in December of that year. Now, whether the report said we can do nothing about this, it didn't matter. At least we would have had a report of what all the issues were and the reasons why we couldn't do it at that time. It's taken us as a scrutiny committee to try and eke out a fair amount of information, and as officers, you also were privy to a report which had been put together by members of the scrutiny committee, and frankly, we're still left in mid-air. We really don't know at this stage whether any of this is going to be implemented. We got a date sometime in the future, possibly in 2022 or 23. And frankly, as the chair has said, if you've got 8 authorities already implementing this, and you've got the majority then of others looking at this are on board and they want to do it, where exactly does that leave it? We are no further forward than when the motion was accepted by the council in 2 years' time. And frankly, in this day and age, it is disappointing that we've got residents in Merthyr, Tydfil, who are having to use, and I would say they are the majority, trying to jam these items into a bin that's too small to take them. And by the time the fortnightly collection comes around, it's no wonder that the lid is wide open, because anybody, I'll put it to you as officers, if you put residual stuff in the bin and then you put fortnight's worth of nappies in there from either one offspring or 2, I would say it's impossible for those people to use the bins properly. So it is disappointing. Where do we go from here? I don't think, frankly, Chair, that we should rest on our laurels. We need to have a proper, detailed, up-to-the-minute report of why and when we can implement this. And what we've got at the moment is some date in the distance. And frankly, I don't think it's good enough for our residents, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Clive. Lee?
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate what you've said, Chair, and what Clive said. You know, we need to be doing this now. We should have really implemented this by now. Other local authorities are doing this all around us, and I don't see why we can't be as well. You know, the detriment it's having to our environment of the ongoing fly tipping issues. I'm sure it will have a massive impact on nappies not going into our streams, rivers, and countryside, and freeing up space within our bins. It can't come soon enough for me. You know, I've been lucky enough to be part of a nappy recycling scheme, and the weight, these caddies or bags contain is phenomenal. It's you know, and that's just with one child, and you know what it would do if somebody had twins or 2 or 3 children like our residents do have. You know, no one like Clive said as well, the bins are too small if you have 1 or 2, even maybe one child in nappy. So like I said, this can't come soon enough for me. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Lee. Malcolm?
Yeah, I'm just in total agreement with everything that's been said. We need to be doing this now. We should have done it years ago. We're way behind the curve on this. So I'd really like to see this progress as quickly as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malcolm. Jeremy?
Yeah, I totally agree with the others, because obviously I go out doing a lot of picking, litter picking, like some other councillors do and what have you. And the amount of nappies I'm picking up in black bags or dumped in carrier bags, that's just dumped in streams, and do you know what I mean? Something's got to be done. We can't go on, I guess, because obviously residents are struggling, and we need to try and help them the best we can.
Lovely. Thank you, Jeremy. Anybody else? Lee, is that a legacy? Yeah. Clive?
It is, Chair.
Clive, you're on mute.
Sorry. If there are no other comments, where does that leave us?
Clive, I've got a couple of comments, if that's all right.
Right.
And then I'll come back to you then.
My question is, where do we go from here?
Yeah, no problem. I've gone through the report, and to be honest, I've gone back and done some more looking into it, and it is negative, and some of the things in there are not quite true either. I think mistakes have been made. It's like the current rates of recycling for nappies are between 17 and 40%, as said in the report. But actually, to be honest, from the people that supply the service, they say it's between 65 and 70%, which would increase, where you said a 1% increase in the overall recycling rate. It's actually 2%, and I think the closer we get to the deadline of having to increase our recycling rates, this is going to be important, to be honest. Some of the things, a new secure permitted site will be required with a competent officer to oversee the permit. Additional mileage and haulage costs to Ammanford. You know, all these things, we need to be working with other local authorities. With 19 of the 22 Welsh local authorities now committed to curbside collections of nappies, you know, the possibilities are endless. You know, we don't have to just work with Rhondda and Taff. We can work with anyone. Caerphilly, Blaenau Gwent, anyone. Just another thing that's been picked up, I've picked up as well, in regards to the waste transfer station. You don't have to apply for a new permit. I believe you can just it's easy just to modify your permit, which is I believe is relatively straightforward. Some of the figures given as well is containers for nappies. No local authority uses containers. It's all plastic bags now. They're all purple bags. Haulage of containers to keep things in. I think you're way out with your figures as well. The figures I've been given from a company that that's dealing with all these local authorities, you're given more than twice the amount it actually costs. So I think some mistakes have been made as well. It's also a little bit misleading. It's the use of reusable nappies would be the more sustainable option in certain circumstances. I take that on board if you go with the 2008 Environment Agency report, but unfortunately that's been rewritten because it didn't take into consideration nappy recycling at all. You know, it's there's a lot of mistakes in this report. The figures given are misleading or wrong, and it's just so negative. I got a couple more, but I go on to members now. Clive, I think the recommendations for the report were to consider and debate the information contained in the report. I think we've considered the information. There's not an awful lot of information there, to be honest. You know, it's I think there could have been a lot more. I think there was room to do a bigger report and to bring a report to full council back here in December 2020. To be honest, especially with the other authorities working on this. But I think more than just considering and debating this, I think we do need to ask for a further report to come to full council. You know, a report with more meat in it, you know, with more figures in it, you know, and maybe the officers could go and speak to companies like Nappy Cycle, you know, and flesh out the report and get it from the horse's mouth. That's just what I think. I don't know if anyone else wants to come in. Judith, did you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, you know, obviously I need to come back after all of those comments. A few things really to say. Yes, the report is negative. We are by no means against introducing this service. We've just tried to set out at the moment, if we were to introduce it, what would it mean? For us, and specifically in waste strategy, obviously any investment we make in the waste service has to be focused upon improving our recycling rate. Obviously, as you'll be aware, the current target is 64%. It's going up to 70% in a couple of years. So anything we do now has to be focused towards that. At the moment, and the evidence from Welsh Government, the data they give us says that introducing AHP to your collection rounds will contribute 1% to an authority's recycling rate. If that rate was saying 3-4%, absolutely, you know, I'd be coming to you saying that possibly we should be introducing it now. But on the basis that it's 1%, the value for money element of it suggests that waiting for the procurement exercise that Welsh Government are carrying out so that there is a facility in South Wales would be the more logical step for us, because it would benefit us more both from recycling and financially as well. When I first came into post, I looked at a number of material streams that we weren't collecting to see if there was anything additional we could do, because that recycling target is extremely challenged to get to. And having, as I said earlier, having spoken to RCT, the feedback from them was quite negative and suggested that, you know, the way to deal with this was to wait for Welsh Government to set up a system that all authorities can participate in. And that's kind of been our waste strategy. You know, it's on our programme, on our template for the next few years. I don't accept wholly that the report is misleading, because the information in there, most of the figures do say approximately, because it is a massive unknown at the moment. We don't know what the participation rate would be, because just because we provide residents with a separate receptacle to collect them doesn't mean that they would participate. So, you know, in that respect, but I would welcome the opportunity to present a further detailed report, possibly back to scrutiny first before full council, where we can explore this information. But I would like the opportunity first to go back to Welsh Government to see, to ascertain exactly when, you know, what dates they're going to come forward to now, where they are in the procurement programme, so we can put some sort of timeline together. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Judith. Yeah, listen, if you before anyone else comes in, I'm quite happy for you to bring another report to cabinet or to this committee, because we should all be working together. You know, we all 33 members and the officers are there for the good of residents, and I think we've got that. With the environment bill that Welsh Government brought in about biodiversity, you know, all this plays into it. You know, it's like 75% of nappies are water, and the last thing we should be doing is what we do now is sending them to be burned. Clive?
Well, Chair, I've listened to what has been said, I'm going to move that we implement the resolution of the full council 2 years ago, which stated that we should have had a report in December 2019, and in moving it that a report is received by full council at the very earliest opportunity, and I don't mean in a year's time, as soon as possible.
I'll second that, Chair.
Can I just come in first? I'm more inclined to go with Judith's recommendation, because to be honest, if we get a report today, or sorry, if we get a report then to full council that is, and I'm not knocking the author of this, but there was no meat or bones in it, to be honest, and I'd like to see, if the report comes to this committee first, and then we pick up that it needs more information in certain departments, we can recommend that before it goes to full council. That's what I'm thinking. But you are right. We do need a timeline on this. Judith, what kind of timeline would you say that you guys could do a report and bring it back?
Well, I'll make contact with Welsh Government this week, and I can advise you then when they come back as to what timeline they are putting together. So perhaps I can advise the committee by email of what timeline the Welsh Government have suggested, and then propose what month I can bring an additional report to scrutiny.
Okay, I would ask, in before I bring anyone else in, they might have different ideas, that when you do a report, maybe you could speak to the suppliers of these that actually do the recycling of nappies, like Nappy Cycle or whoever else is out there. But it's up to the rest of the committee what they want to do now on how they vote. Clive, what do you think?
Well, the issue is we haven't had a report which was asked for. We've discussed it, I would say, quite thoroughly this afternoon, and I still feel that the report should go to full council, because it's not just the members of the Scrutiny Committee is interested in this. All members, I would argue, are interested. And if that report, if we are not happy with the content of that report, we can call it into scrutiny from council. But at least the motion was accepted by council 2 years ago, would have been implemented, and all members of the council would have an opportunity of asking questions and making comments on that report to full council.
Thank you, Clive. I just think that before we've kicked up that items don't come to scrutiny before they go to full council. And I think maybe we have that chance if Judith can do the report then, and we can scrutinise it. And if we want more information in it, then we can send it up to full council. But I do think it needs to be done as soon as possible. Lee?
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons to both, really. I think I'm leaning towards it coming back to scrutiny. I'd like to know a bit more about what the funding is available as well, because obviously, some of these costs are really, really high, and if they can be offset again with funding, then we're on to a winner. So if a more in-depth report on funding available, that would be great.
Okay.
Clive? Well, the big question is, Scrutiny Committee meets every 6 weeks. We got our last one now in July before the summer recess. Time is taken away. If we are leaning towards coming back to Scrutiny Committee, when will that be? Right.
As I said, if I contact Welsh Government by the end of this week, and I can give you an indication by email then of which month I'm likely to be able to bring the report to.
But unless we put a timeline on it, Judith, that could be in 6 months' time.
Well, Clive, sorry, because the actual meeting we're in today was delayed because just with the way the AGM felt, or the next meeting of this committee is actually on the 5th of July, which is in 3 weeks' time.
Right.
And I'm thinking if Judith can come back to us then to say, listen, we can do a report to scrutiny by this date, and then if we're happy with that, maybe we vote on it then, or make a decision then.
Well,
if you're happy with that.
Chair, as long as that comes to the next meeting, and as a scrutiny committee, I think we need to make it clear to the officers we want it on the agenda in 3 weeks' time. And if we are not, satisfied, then in that instance, it should then go to council.
Okay. Judith, are you okay coming back in 3 weeks' time to say that how you've got on with Welsh Government and give us a timeline on when it could come back to scrutiny and then follow the full council?
Yeah, and then the full report to follow. Yes, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes, I think so. I would still. I got a funny feeling this is going to end up in full council at some time. So just to be crystal clear, Judith, there'll be a further report coming to us as a scrutiny committee with more information.
There will, yeah. I'll go back to Welsh Government initially, and for the July scrutiny meeting, I'll give a timeline of when that full report will be brought.
Right. Okay. I'm reasonably happy with that.
Okay. Judith, thank you very much, and thank you very much to Stephen as well. I think that's as you can go if you like. We've only got a couple of little things left. Thank you, and thank you very much for your input. Agenda item number 5, scrutiny referrals, feedback and follow-up actions. I don't think there are any, to be honest. Then agenda item number 6 is reflection and evaluation of the meeting. To be honest, I think, as Clive said, and I did see this myself last night, that it was asked for in full council to bring a report in June or July. June, I think it was, 2019, for a full report to go to full council in December. And I think you are quite right. We should have been doing this years ago. And I think it will cost a little bit of money, but just we've got responsibilities, to be honest. And I think this is very important.
Yeah, and Chair, just because I made a note, and then somebody else, I think it was Lee, asked the point about the use of reusable. One of the suggestions here is the use of reusable nappies would be the more sustainable option in certain circumstances. Well, when I was bringing up our children, we were using reusable nappies, but the world has moved on since then. You try and tell the young people today, parents, that they should go back to what we were doing perhaps 30 or 40 years ago, and they'd look at you with their eyes rolling. So to make that suggestion in there was frankly a bit over the top. But it hasn't been good because we've tried to eke out as much information, which in my opinion, they could have supplied in this report. So to say it was a frustrating meeting is the understatement of the century.
You just come back on that, Clive. Personally, I wouldn't want to wash nappies, to be honest. And I don't think my missus would either, to be honest, for the grandkids. But some residents are doing it, and I have been asked by residents of what schemes are available. And there's actually a scheme in London throughout different boroughs where they financially reward residents for this pack, because I think actually to start it up in the beginning you need like £300 or £400 to actually buy the whole kit. But those figures they gave, it was out of an Environment Agency report in 2008, but to be honest, they didn't take into consideration recycling nappies. I don't think it was heard of back then. Di?
Just, I don't know if it is a minor point. On the comment of if everybody used terry nappies, that it would be a lot better, then surely we would either be losing our bottom ash weight in the refuse. whichever way it goes, our recycling figures go down if we use all terry napkins.
Yes. Lee?
Yeah, well, let's give people the option if they want, let's look into both. If they do want to go down the reusable nappies, let's give them the option. Let's explore all routes. We could write this report for them, no problem. I reckon we could write it in a week and a half. And get all the figures and be more spot on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Lee, I completely agree with you. There's no enthusiasm in this report, to be honest, and I think it's members that have the enthusiasm for this because it's what residents want and it's good for the environment. Yeah, we could actually. Yeah.
This is a win-win. There's not going to be one. Well, you can see negativity on a brand new bus station, but I would imagine that there would be very little negativity around this. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if it stops people jumping up and down on the bins, trying to ram stuff in the bin, which I can remember when my little one was in nappies, and come to the end of the 2 weeks, I'd have to put a black bag in the bin from, obviously there was no recyclables in there, but I'd have to put a black bag in there and put a chair by the side of it, hold onto my fence, and jump up and down just to squash it down to cause my lid, because otherwise you'd have a red tag on it.
We've all been there, and look, and the other report we've brought as well, Derek, is rats, and rats haven't been mentioned today, and like how many nappies go into the community, and what does that do with rats? So I don't know, mental.
Malcolm?
Yeah, I've had a resident in tears on my doorstep because they couldn't get their nappies into the bin without, like you say, jumping up and down on it.
Yeah.
But that is literally what the wardens did when they come along. This was adult diapers. The wardens come along and forced them into the bin. The old age pensioner physically could not do this, and she was absolutely in tears on my doorstep. And they wouldn't give her a yellow top bin. It was absolutely madness.
I keep saying, Malcolm, to be honest, this council as an organisation, it's got no, in my opinion. I don't know if anybody.
Yeah, it's just upset. It's just upsetting for people as well who are adults with these pads as well, and they don't want to be seen to be like I know somebody when they said, oh, their mother needed a bin, and they said, oh, I'm gonna have wardens round to check, and they were mortified to think they were having people coming around checking their bins.
Yeah, I completely.
I can give you a case where a woman, she's bedbound, has carers 4 times a day, in nappies, as you can imagine. She's got to be bed bathed and thingy. And they kept refusing her a bin because she wouldn't take her black bags of the nappies out, the carers, until it was bin day, and then put them in the bin. Because obviously they were paranoid. They just put them outside or whatever, because they'd have obviously a couple of bags extra, and they used to ask the boys on the bank and they chuck them in the back. But because sometimes the bin wasn't full, they were trying to tell her, oh, well, you can't have a yellow top bin because you obviously don't need it because there's room in your bin. But it's not. She didn't want to chuck the bags outside. That's obviously can be embarrassing. Dogs rip them open, rats rip them open, yeah. I got her one in the end, but it was like the palaver she had to go through just for a bin when it's like she's bedbound. She's got carers 4 times a day. Obviously she needs it, just give it to her.
I've had exactly the same.
Yeah, I think maybe this scheme, if it came, it could save that embarrassment that people face as well.
And for refusing, no, sometimes for refusing someone for a yellow top bin because they found a piece of paper in the bin or a Greg's cup that someone's actually chucked in there because they didn't want to litter, and they're walking past and they chuck something in your bin. I've had it happen to me. It's common sense got to prevail surely sooner or later with them. It's just, well, I know you laughed at, but it won't happen. But sometimes it's like, come on, bit of common sense.
It is true though. We walk a community. There's no bins. We've been told like, well, let's take bins away because it leads to fly tipping. But then you're walking around with something. There's nothing. I'd rather throw it in somebody's bin than I would, on the floor or whatever. I'm never gonna. And then they get penalised. Sorry, it's frustrating. I know we'll go on all day with this. So sorry, Chair. I don't know what's happened.
We've lost the chair. Who's vice chair?
I don't know. Clive, is that you?
No. David Jones is a vice chair, I think.
I don't even know.
You vice chair, Di?
Yes, I am indeed vice chair. So I don't know where our glorious leader has gone. Still on, as we're still on assessment, I think that it's been a very good effort by the members of this committee today, highlighting how poor the report that was put in front of us was. And well done to everybody, every member of the committee. Does anyone else have a comment about that?
I totally agree.
Boss is back, man.
I missed what you said, Di. I do apologise. It's got to that time and down list where the sun's going down and reception is it's going.
No, Dick, I just said that is a good effort on the behalf of all of the members of the committee in raising how disappointed we were with what was a poor report.
Yeah.
And you're here now, so you can take back over.
I think the sun's gone down again.
No, he's frozen again, Di.
No, it's just crazy, guys, isn't it? You can, so I don't know. I know someone had a warning letter the other day because they put a battery in the bin because they didn't know about the battery bugs. Do you know what I mean? And they had a warning if they do it again, they'll have a fine. And it's like, come on, common sense, innit? For the sake of a battery.
I know where you're coming from, but when you look at the bigger picture, Jer, if people, the refuse boys do approximately 500 houses a day, if that happens in every house, then it becomes an issue, doesn't it? I understand what you're saying. It's just a battery in a bin, but it's like people say, well, we had the plastic and cans bag out, and there was a bottle in it. These boys are doing 500 a day. They can't pull 500 bottles out. It's going to take their time back. I don't know whether
No, what I meant by that, I was in the black bin when they done the search for guns, and there was a battery in the black bin. And
sorry, I'm misreading what you said.
To send a warning to someone that you're going to find them over the battery and everything else was recyclable. To me, as a warden, if I was a bin warden, I would have had a bit of common sense there and said, all right, so obviously a mistake, do you know what I mean? I wouldn't send them a warning this time. I'll just knock the door and just say, I'm all looking all out, chuck batteries in bin, blah, blah, blah. Don't do it again because I'll have to give you a warning. It's just sometimes it seems no common sense with these bin wardens, the way they search in the bins and I don't know.
I do wonder whether it's all the regular boys that do it, because sometimes we get I don't think we'd have agency in for wardening though, would we?
No.
We get agency boys in. That's generally when I get most of the complaints that I get.
Yeah.
I've never had any complaints about the wardens myself. They've always come back to me and said they've been polite and whatever, but maybe there's the odd one. Maybe I like Jeremy said, I hope common sense would prevail, and you just speak to somebody and say, oh look, you know, this is what should be done. You know, just people still probably not made aware of the battery recycling, so or whatever. So there's new schemes all the time in it for people. Chair, you're back.
Yeah, Chair. I think we're still on item 8. 6.
Mute.
You're on mute, Chair.
Muted, Chair.
I'm on my phone now. I do apologise. Sorry about that. Thanks very much for taking over there. And hello.
Yeah, you're still going.
I don't know if anyone has got anyone else to say, but I don't know if you want to end it there. Any other business? I've got none. And I think I've got to officially end the meeting. So I officially end the meeting, and thank you very much for turning up, everyone. And thank you very much.
Cheers. Cheers. Thanks.
See you soon. Take care.
Ta-ra.
Ta-ra.